Team, welcome back to another episode of Due North. I'm in a tunnel in Senja, and the reason I'm in a tunnel in Senja is because I went for a drive to find a clear sky for what is the strongest aurora forecast I have ever seen, ever. And the weather sucks, so I went looking for clear skies, and in this tunnel is the only place I feel comfortable recording very quickly, because the van was getting rocked all over the place, and like seriously rocked all over the place. The solar panel was rattling up there. Well, I say rattling, it was banging up there. So I decided to abort the plan to go to the coast. I'm going to head inland a bit, and rather than look for a clear sky, I have to just hope it comes to me. We'll see. Team, this weather is not changing at all. It's not going to change by the look of things for about a week. I had a plan this morning. I finished the tour, the virtual tour that I was shooting here at the Aurora Borealis Observatory, and I was going to drive to into Schiebondalen towards Kofifernweh in Finland, because I figured inland it's going to be a bit better. Looking at the pictures I've seen on social media, it is better, there are clearer skies. But there's been an avalanche. And the road that I want to take, which is the only road in that direction, is under 4 meters of avalanche. Just before Schiebon, between Nordkustbund and Schiebon. I think I'm going to head that way and just wait, because this is no good. storm stopped. I've been on the road for 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, and I'm going through a mountain pass in Schiebondalen on the way between Schiebon and Kofifernweh, Norway to Finland. And behind me there's a truck its hazard lights on, and I crept past it real slow to see what was going on, and then I come here and I see that truck, and that truck's up on a slope, stuck, and I don't know how stuck, but he has moved backwards about 5 meters the whole time I've been here. There's some orange flashing lights at the top there. I don't know if they're going to come and help. And then this truck has just pulled up as well. I don't want to go past that truck because I don't know how much space is to the side of it, and I need momentum going up the hill just as much as these trucks do. I don't want to get stuck because I won't be able to get going. So I'm currently sitting at the side of the road in a Norwegian traffic jam consisting of 4 vehicles caused by that one. Yeah. So there's where that coach is coming down, stupidly, I don't know why, behind the mountain that it's just going into now, there's a snowplow coming down backwards, and I'm hoping that snowplow is going to help rescue this guy, because the next option, it goes to focus again, the next option to the north via Alta and then down into Finland is blocked by a fresh avalanche that happened about an hour ago. The other option south via Abisko and Kiruna in Sweden is also blocked by another avalanche. And to get here, I drove through where there was an avalanche 2 days ago, and it was horrible. There was just piles and piles of snow by the road, full of tree trunks. That's a truck coming the other way, so it looks to me like the road is open. So now I need to de-ice and get up there and get moving. It is open. These guys are stuck here. I guess they can't get the traction to get moving. I say open. Is it open or is it just... I don't know. I've seen a couple of cars go by. I think they went all the way through, so I'm going to go slow and steady and see how far I get. That's the back end of the lorry earlier, and there's the front end where he went in. So that's what the problem was earlier. There's still that one on the slope there. I don't know if that's the same one. I know what the logo was on the side though. And there's still something going on at the top of the hill. There's a lot of snow dust about. Blizzardy. I think they must have cleared that for this as well. So let's slow and steady go up here and see what happens. Well, here we are, KelbyOne, back in Finnish Lapland. Temperature is currently -8. I don't know, because of the time I've lost, I think I'm going to carry on driving while this sky is clear and the weather is okay towards, well, according to the sat-nav, the GPS, the next junction I need to turn right at is 268 kilometers, 180 miles away. So yeah. So the moon, I guess, is pretty strong, lighting up the landscape, but that's still, that aurora at KP3 is still powering through it. It's incredible, and it's arcing right over me, all the way up, and then disappearing where the moon is. This is incredible. Look at this. Look at it. What? Finland, and this is the place, if you remember 3 or 4 episodes back, when the van was minus 40 degrees C and I had to go and warm it up in the garage. Well, the garage is just over here. I've just been in the supermarket, stocked up rather. Got myself a little chocolate pudding, get some energy, because I think tonight I'm going to carry on driving 120 kilometers or 90-ish miles. I think it's 96. Anyway, I'm going to go towards Sweden. I've got 7 days to do 1,855 kilometers, and then I'm going to Iceland. You'll see that next time, I think. Yeah, you'll see that next week. So, yeah, I mean, this is what it's really all about, what actually happened. So, some of the questions that have been coming in. How am I getting the shots where, like, the camera's right by the van while the van's driving and I'm driving with 2 hands? How is that done? Well, that's with an Insta360 X2. The camera is a 360 camera, and I put it on a pole, stick it out the window and sort of hold it whilst holding the steering wheel. But then in the editing software, the stick is removed, so it looks like the camera's floating. It's the same camera that I use to get the skiing shots. Another one is about the drone shots. How do I get the drone shots when the van's driving? Well, it's always when the van is the only thing on the road, as you will have seen. And it's when the van is in the shot, you'll notice that the drone is just doing one thing. It's going straight forwards or sideways, whichever it is, it's doing one thing. The drone I use doesn't have active tracking. It just, you have to fly it manually or not at all. So I very carefully just hold the controls in one fixed position while the van is in the shot, and as soon as the van comes out of the frame, the drone, you know, goes and flies all over the place. Well, that's because I stop as soon as I see I'm out of frame. Now I can stop thinking about driving and start thinking about flying the drone. So that's how that's done. Let's go a little further down the road and see if we can get towards Sweden. Those northern lights last night were pretty huge. A G2 rated geomagnetic storm hit the earth at about 5 AM. I stayed up till about 4. That G2 was not forecast. It came from one of the flares that went sideways out of the sun and obviously went outwards into space, and some of it got caught up, and well, a lot of it caught up. Over 10 parts per centimetre cubed of plasma coming into the atmosphere at over 600 kilometers per second. Anyway, I am continuing answering your questions, so I have a quick job to do. I need to empty the toilet, which is one of the worst jobs. I ran out of stuff, so I went and bought some, and then, so this is the town of Moonia. We have water, air, and a chemical toilet sink, which is right next to the garage and attached to the gas station. This is the garage that I put the van in a few weeks ago when it got too cold and I had to warm it up again. So obviously it hasn't been used for at least a few days, and I'm going to spare you having to watch me, but I need to get the toilet out of here, put it in here, and I hate it. Okay, so now that stinky job's done, in fact that's a question. It's not stinky. The chemicals deodorize things, and as long as you stay on top of it and have the right amount of chemicals, the toilet doesn't smell. So that's a question out of the way. It doesn't smell. Right, I'm going to fire off some questions. Let's do it. Don't overinflate the tyres in cold weather pressure. That's not a question. You're telling me what to do. I know what to do. Thank you. I would like some tips on driving in the van in snowy conditions. I'm a confident driver in the van, pretty confident in the car in the snow, but driving in the van in the snow makes me really nervous. How do you stay safe? Well, basically, whatever the speed limit is, forget it. You go as fast as you are confident and driving, and you need to be confident in the abilities of yourself and of the vehicle. So don't push the van beyond its limits, and don't push yourself beyond your limits. You need to be able to stop, but in these conditions your brakes are virtually useless. Your brakes will get you stopped at the end of the slowing down period, but if you put your brakes on at 60, 70, 80 kilometers an hour, you're just going to skid. And it doesn't matter what traction control or ABS situation you're rocking, if you have regular or winter tyres. To be able to use your brakes effectively, you need studded tyres, and even then it's not that good. So go drive to the conditions and drive to your van and your own abilities. Steer slowly, accelerate slowly, and brake slowly. If you have a junction coming up that you need to stop at, turn at, or do something at, you need to plan for it way back down the road. Everything, especially when it's snowy, wet snow or ice, everything is exaggerated. You know when you do your driving test and the braking distance like doubles in the wet? Well, it's kind of like that, except it quadruples or even more. So slow and steady. Don't worry if there's someone behind you. Don't worry about that. Don't let it pressure you. Do what you need to do and go the speed you need to go at, and to your own abilities. That's the biggest tip, and everything takes longer. Everything. So just accept that. Deal with it, whatever. It doesn't matter. What have we got? What setup have I got in the van? Well, there is a van tour on the channel, so you can go back before the Due North series started. You can watch a full van tour and see exactly what's going on in here. But essentially, I've got a double bed at the back there that you can just about see. It's raised up 1 meter off the floor. Under that is the electronics and everything else, and then a load of storage space, particularly winter storage, winter stuff storage, like the chains, the max tracks, a shovel, a brush and an ice scraper, and then there's extra water, extra gas and stuff like that. I've got a kitchen with a portable gas cooker, so I don't have a fixed gas supply, LPG or anything like that. Reason being, every country has its own situation with regards to gas. So you have different connectors and different regulators and all these things. It's a headache. If you just buy a camping gas stove, you take it out and put it away, mine stows behind my driver's seat, just down in this little gap, then you've covered everything. And those gas cartridges are available everywhere. They're available in the supermarket I'm parked outside of, they're available in the gas station down the road that we just emptied the toilet at. They are everywhere. Swivel seat beside me, and blackout thermal curtains and blinds everywhere. Massive skylight in the roof so I can see the stars and the northern lights. Most importantly, because the amount of driving, this is really comfortable here. I've got my phone there, stereo, I upgraded the speakers, and there's extra speakers above my head, as well as the one in the door and the one in the front, and a swivel seat, and just everything's just really comfortable to drive because of the amount of time I'm on the road. So that's essentially what's going on in the van. I don't want to go too deep into some of these answers. Heating, what heating system have you got, please? I have a Chinese diesel heater. It's under my bench seat in the back. I haven't turned it off for 3 weeks. It's been running 3 weeks straight and it's fine. It's the one with the aluminium body rather than the one with the plastic body, because I don't want the plastic to warp, because then it causes problems, like rubbing against the fan and all those sorts of things. So it's the one with the aluminium body. It's a diesel heater. It's plumbed into the diesel tank. The fuel pipe that plumbs into the diesel tank is outside underneath the van, and it hasn't frozen. The fuel around here has an additive which stops it freezing at the temperatures it would freeze at where I'm from, and where I'm guessing most of you are from. So it freezes at like -40 or -45, which is perfect because that's about as cold as it gets around here. Snowplow going by, lovely jubbly. That's what I like to see. Get those roads sorted. Did you ever get snowed in, and if so, how did you get out? I not snowed in per se. Quite often I will wake up with a mound of snow on the van, on the windscreen, on the mirrors, and sometimes the ice has caused the doors to freeze closed, which is basically just a bit of brute force to break the ice and clean all the snow off. I have sometimes dug out in front of the wheels just to get the first bit of traction going. Because this is a rear wheel drive, there are pros and cons. In terms of getting out of things, it's a pro, because under the van there won't be a pile of snow, so the rear wheels can get the traction the length of the van before I hit a pile of snow, so that's fine. But in terms of the cons, rear wheel drive is not ideal for slippery conditions. It causes oversteer, and if you're going up a slope where it's icy, you can lose the back end a lot easier when it's rear wheel drive as opposed to when it's front wheel drive or four wheel drive. So no, I haven't been snowed in, but I've made sure I haven't been snowed in, if that makes sense. Every time there's been a big dump of snow forecast, I've put myself in a sensible place where either a snowplow is going to be coming by, or I'm near civilization, so if I got stuck I could have helped myself. You know, there's all these things where I've made sure I'm in the right position to not be snowed in. And there's a recovery truck going by with a car on the back, and that's an example of how often it happens around here. People do get stuck, snowed in, go off the road, and I've just made sure I haven't come up against that situation. So what other questions do I have? Give me 2 seconds. Let's find another feed, here we go. Being a complete novice, what can I use a leisure battery for? Would charging my camera batteries trip it? Bit boring, blah 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 blah. Okay, no, it's not a boring question, it's a good question. My leisure batteries are lithium ion, LiFePO4. So it's lithium iron phosphate. They're called LiFePO or LiFePO4, or just lithium. I have, how much do I have? I have 300 amp hours of lithium batteries. They run an 1800 watt inverter, and they power all the DC stuff. So the fridge is DC. It was £500 for that fridge because it's DC, but it uses 1 amp hour. It's bare minimum. You can charge anything off it, but you just need to keep an eye on it. When you're charging the batteries, you should be looking at over 14 volts, around 14.4. And then when you're not charging them, they need to sit in the range of 13 volts. even though it's a 12 volt battery. That's the bit that sometimes confuses people. They need to sit in the range of 13. If it drops down into the high 12s, that's okay, but you're losing power. If it gets down to 12.3, 12.2, somewhere like that, I would stop using it and get it charging as soon as possible. Where your phone battery says 100%, 99, etc., that's not what really happens with these batteries. You can't safely look at a percentage, although there are things that will give you a percentage. I have Bluetooth monitors on mine that give me a percentage. I also have a Victron connection on it, so my solar charge controller is telling me the voltage of the batteries. You need to look at that number rather than a percentage. So you can charge anything off it, but if you have an appliance that uses a high amount of watts, a big load, then you need a lot of batteries. So if you're running a hairdryer, a microwave, a kettle, one of those things that uses a lot of watts, you won't be able to do it without a huge battery setup, or you'll deplete these real quick. So yeah, that's what you can do with one of those. How do you decide? Let's do one more. How do you decide where you want to go and what route do you take? The most direct or the most scenic? And second question from the same comment from Peter here. How many of your final shots result from planned destinations as opposed to things you happen upon along the way? A lot of these northern Scandinavian roads are scenic roads, either just by the nature of the things that they go by, or in the case of Norway, they actually plan the roads to go past beautiful things. Part of the planning of a road is to make sure you pass close by lots of things that are beautiful to look at. So quite often the most direct route around here and northern Norway, I'm in Finland right now, northern Norway is the most scenic route and the most direct route, because that's just how the road system works. I've spent £3,654.71 on diesel since starting this trip. So when I want to see something that's out of the way, I'm thinking about how much out of the way, how far out of the way it is really, because relative to everything like a normal drive, if I'm doing 100 miles, another 100 miles is a long way out of the way. But if I'm doing 1,000 miles, 100 miles isn't necessarily a long way out of the way. So I will go out of the way to see something if it's worth it, if I think there's going to be a nice picture or something good to do or look at that location. And then in terms of shots that are planned, there are a lot of happy accidents in photography, and when I was in Iceland I spoke about the amount of effort versus the amount of reward, where when we plan something really well, it might not necessarily perform when we put a load of effort into something and put a load of planning into it, it might not perform as well as something that was ad hoc, spur of the moment, and we didn't put a load of planning into it, and that can be quite frustrating. But happy accidents occur, and sometimes we do get amazing shots just on the things we chance upon. So it's almost a 50-50 split, to be honest. I'll go somewhere because I want to take a photo of a specific thing in that place, but then I'll find something else while I'm there that I'll take a photo of, and it might be the winning shot. So, but then that all comes down to planning and composition as well as a photographer. When you plan something really well, that gets you there and that gets you into the zone and taking the photos. But then when you're there, you can look at other angles, other compositions, you can take feedback from the weather or the lighting and see if there are other shots to be had. So it's kind of a 50-50 split. Right, we'll pick up some more questions later on. I'm going to head towards Akeslompolo, which is probably 50 kilometers away, and that's out of the way. I wasn't planning on going there. I'm going 50 kilometers out of the way because tonight the Northern Lights might be huge. Might be. I hope they are. Let's go. Before we get much further, I've skimmed through the questions. There's quite a lot about driving in these sort of conditions, particularly driving a van in these conditions. So I'm going to quickly give a ton of advice all in one go right here. So I've said that braking is pretty much useless. Your brakes are like 80% redundant. You need to slow down with your acceleration sense. You need to use your gears and brakes in combination to slow down. If you need to do an emergency stop, your brakes are just not going to cut it. And no matter how good your traction control or your ABS, ice is ice, and you're not going to stop like you can on tarmac. So you need to consider that, and you need to plan ahead. You need to look ahead, and you need to be reading the road. So looking for changes in conditions, changes in the road surface, changes in weather, signs that there is wind coming from one direction or the other, like blowing snow or trees moving. You need to plan that, because if you're in a big van like this and you get a gust of wind, a strong gust of wind from the side, it's going to push the van. And the only way you can deal with that is either to stop or to slow down, so that you can manage that risk as it happens. Again, looking down the road and assessing and scanning for any hazard and dealing with it way in advance. So when you come up to a corner, you need to be doing all your braking and slowing down way before you get to that corner, so that when you get there, you're at the right speed and in the right gear. And gearing, not just for corners but for everything, needs to be very well considered. So you can't be driving around in the gear that's good for economy. You need to be driving around in the gear where you have the option to accelerate or decelerate using that gear at that point. So you need to be using fuel, basically. You can't drive economically in these sort of conditions. If you can put your foot down and accelerate, or take your foot off and slow down, then you're in the right gear for these conditions. You need to be looking to the side of the road as well. If you see tracks or scars where vehicles have gone in the snow, you need to consider why and how and what else is out there. So looking for moose tracks and reindeer tracks that cross the road. When you see those tracks, there's a good chance, probably about 75% chance, you're going to see that moose or that reindeer, and you need to be ready to stop, because reindeer have a habit of just being in the road. They don't salt many of the roads around here, because the reindeer will stand in the road and eat the salt, but they will just suddenly appear in the road. And moose are the worst for it, because a moose just looks like a shadow. You can't see it until you're there on top of it. And a moose is at least 600 kilos and it will kill you if you hit it. A reindeer, you're going to kill the reindeer, but a moose, you're going to die. There's no nice way of putting that. You have to be prepared for that sort of stuff. So look for the tracks and slow down and deal with them. Make sure if there were a moose in the shadow that you can't see through your headlights, that you could stop by that point. Also looking for scars of vehicles that have gone off the road. Why? Is it wind? Have they swerved to avoid an animal? Was there ice on the road? Why has a vehicle gone off the road? And if you see multiple scars on one stretch of road, just slow down, get the speed off. It's just not worth it. For me, and for some of you watching who are living in a van, it is your home, and you can't put it in the snow like you perhaps could with a car and just get away with it, because things are going to break and move, and it's just not worth that risk. And on top of that, if you were, whether you're in your van or a rental car or whatever, if you were to end up in the snow and you needed to be rescued and pulled out, it's going to cost you about 500 euros. That's just the way it is. So make sure you have a recovery breakdown plan that will cover you in these places, Europe-wide or worldwide recovery plan. I have a worldwide recovery plan, and it's worth it, because it costs nothing compared to the 500 euros that it would cost me if I needed to get rescued, pulled out, towed to a garage, whatever it may be. And yeah, it's all about just like not being scared. Driving in these conditions, you need to be aware, and you need to plan for things and really look down the road and scan and look for any hazards constantly. Be in the right gear, steer out of a problem. So if you go into a skid, don't touch the brakes, you're going to make it worse. You need to correct the steering and then try again, and just come off the drive so that you can try and get some traction again, and ultimately just try and not skid in the first place. But you know, if you do end up skidding, your brakes are going to make it worse. You need to steer out of the problems. Just plan. Don't be scared, but be aware. If you're scared, you're going to be nervous and you might do things wrong. If you're just aware of the hazards of driving in these sort of conditions, then you can deal with those things a lot better, and the slower you go, the better. Don't worry about if anyone's behind you. Like I said before, just take it easy. Don't push yourself, don't go beyond your limits or the vehicle's limits. And if it takes you an hour longer to get somewhere, so be it. It takes you an hour longer. I'm in a supermarket car park in Ekaslumpalo at the moment, and it's full of cars and vans. There's a couple of vans about as well. One of them looks to be a van lifer with a solar panel and a ladder on it. These vehicles are here all the time. They drive around on these roads all the time in all conditions, and so it's doable. You just have to be smart about the way you do it. So there's the driving thing done. There's driving, looking for. Let's sum it up. Don't go too fast. Use your gears. Brakes are virtually redundant, but make sure you are in a position to be able to brake if you need to brake. If you come into a problem, you can't brake, you need to steer your way out of the problem. Get all your slowing down done before you get to a corner, and get the right gear before you get to a corner. Constantly scan for hazards, particularly look for wildlife hazards, tracks and things like that. And just be sensible. That's driving summed up in these conditions. Let's move on. The sky is looking really bad, but I'm heading over here to see Samu, because there is my ride to the top of the mountain. We're going to give this another go and see if we can get some aurora tonight. The sky is not looking great, but it's worth a try. Anything could happen, and I can see the moon over there, so there is something cool happening. Let's see what's going on here. There's Samu's van, and he's currently moving the snow makers, the snow blowers, into the garage with this machine, the Snowcat. Look at it! The power of this thing is phenomenal. That's it. That's Finland behind me, and this is Sweden. The time in Finland is 1:55, and the time here is midnight 55. I've gained an hour, and I'm gonna go find somewhere to get some sleep, and I'll smash out some more kilometers in the morning. team. I'm just over halfway down the Swedish coast, or halfway down Sweden really, and let's get a couple more of these questions dealt with. So, how have you got on managing your camera, drone and video gear in the extreme cold? Is it hard keeping the batteries fresh? Yes, basically it is. The battery will last about half as long as normal in extreme cold. I've put all my gear through its paces. The drone, I flew the drone in minus 30 degrees C. The Platypod I used at minus 40. My tripod, three-legged thing, Bucky, froze, and I got my hand stuck to it at about minus 35. And the batteries, you just need to constantly charge those batteries, and try and keep the camera, either keep it warm or keep it cold. You can't switch between the two, because then you cause problems. Then you get the condensation that then freezes and then thaws again, and then that breaks the camera or breaks whatever other gear. So you either keep it hot or you keep it cold. You don't switch between the two. If you take a look at my pit stop videos, there is a tip about that very thing. So, do you ever feel lonely? No, not really. I've constantly got people to talk to. As you saw, I was with people back up in Norway, and I'm currently heading to Iceland to be with other people. So no, I don't feel lonely. But what's important with that is we spend a lot of time in our own company. We spend a lot of time in our own head, in life in general. And so, because of the sheer amount of time that we spend in our own head, with our own thoughts, with our own company, we need to make that a good place to be. So, no, I don't feel lonely, but it's because I've conditioned myself that when I'm alone, I'm fine, I'm good. My head is a good place for me to be. So it's important, if you're feeling lonely or if you're feeling you need some company, that you remember that you spend all your time in your own head. Your head needs to be a good place to be. How do you overcome fear? I'm assuming you've experienced it, be a threat of avalanche, hitting a moose, sketchy randos. Has this had an effect on your spirituality? Spirituality, I do not believe. So there's that dealt with. I believe in me, basically, and science and nature. How do you overcome fear? So, the fear of hitting a moose is very, very, very real. Very real. Yesterday I did 340 odd miles, nearly 500 kilometers, and the fear of hitting a moose was constantly there. Those 340 miles, I was constantly scanning the road, the edges of the road, looking for moose, reindeer, or anything else. And so far as overcoming fear, I take a lot of experience from my previous career, where fear was always there, and I lived with it and learned and conditioned myself to realise that fear is not helpful. You analyse the risk and you assess the risk, and you do a proper risk assessment. You work out, if something goes wrong, how bad is it? And then you look at, well, what are the chances of that actually happening? And then you weigh up and assess a risk and keep it in mind, and sort of live by that during the time that it's relevant. So fear is not good, but being aware of things and managing risk is huge. So am I going to hit a moose, sketchy randos, the threat of an avalanche? You are aware of these things, and you weigh up what's worth doing and what's not worth doing, basically. So that's that one. Why didn't you paint the van orange? Clearly it must be more noticeable in the snow for rescue reasons. I painted the van green, matte green, so that if it was in a photo, it was deliberate. But if I didn't want it to be in a photo, but it was in the photo anyway, I could hide it through photographic methods and editing methods. So that's why the van's green. In terms of getting rescued, whether it's orange or not, it's huge. Personally, if I were to wear orange clothing, that would make a difference, because I'm not huge. Well, I am, but I'm not huge. So that's why that is. That's why that's there. Where next? Let's finish with where next. So, I'm on my way down to Copenhagen. I'm going to catch a plane to Iceland. I've said that before. So in next week's video, that's where you're going to pick up from. You're going to pick up from me being in Copenhagen and getting ready to catch a plane to Iceland, and we're going to head to Iceland together for an experience like no other. And on that note, I thank you very much for joining me, and please remember to hit all those buttons, subscribe to the channel, leave me a comment, ask me a question, I'll get to it at some point. And remember, most importantly, it's a once in a lifetime, as often as you can. I'll see you next time.